Okay, let's make a start. So let's take a look at the agenda. Do some very quick welcome and introduction. So you'll be able to see on the screen today myself. I'm Janet King, Sector Manager for Education and Childcare here at NCFE, and I'm joined by Angie Rogers and Stacey Mann. And we sit under the umbrella of NCFE with different and diverse roles within the organisation. So it's great to be here. So if we can just move forward the slide, please. Stacey, we'll take a look at the agenda. Okay, so welcome everybody. We are really pleased and delighted to welcome everybody to the student conference. It's absolutely fantastic to bring everybody together and to be able to share some of the best practice that's going on out there in the sector and in the field and the world of education. So we've got a fantastic conference lined up for you. The conference will be recorded, so you will be able to access any part of this as soon as possible, and that will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel for you to use and to be able to revisit certain aspects and features within your own teaching and learning. So today we are welcoming Robin. Robin Sternham-Coombs is a senior lecturer in social welfare and is a qualified social worker from the University of Northampton. We're welcoming Mandy Richardson, Managing Director, and Sian Stadden, Training Support and Quality Lead at Naturally Learning Nurseries. We're welcoming Dr. Emma Harvey, Higher Technical Education Lecturer and IQA, Internal Quality Assurer for Early Years and Education at Suffolk New College. And this is the bit that we all get a little bit excited about, whether we're guest speakers or facilitators. We are welcoming Libby, and Libby is a student from Cirencester College. Welcome to Libby, and how fantastic to be able to have a professional and a student voice today on the conference. That's so exciting. And I know, Libby, that you are going to inspire us all. So well done for coming on board. We will also hear from Stacey, and Stacey Mann is the Senior Advisor for Families, Early Years and Childcare at Campaign for Learning. Now, there will be an opportunity for questions following each guest speaker slot, and that's simply because obviously we have a student conference that is due to run from now right through till 12:30. Or thereabouts, and we will have some Q&A and plenary towards the end of that session, but also, of course, the guest speakers that we are engaging with today are fantastically busy, and so the opportunity to do the questions following their presentations is something that we welcome, as they may not be able to stay for the full conference, and we absolutely appreciate that. So guest speakers, if you need to leave straight after your session slot, please do so, and thank you very much for your engagement so far. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Robin, but let me just introduce you to Robin. Robin is registered with Social Work England and the British Association of Social Workers. Prior to academia, Robin spent an extensive amount of time working in child protection and safeguarding, managing complex cases from referral through to initial court hearing. Robin is passionate about teaching and enhancing students' learning and development in higher education. His passion for social work has led to an emerging interest in how higher education institutions prepare students to practice intuitive reasoning in social work practice. And he has a deep interest in attachment, bonding, and relationships. Robin currently teaches from foundation degrees to master's level at the University of Northampton, and he's in the final stages of his own academic doctoral studies. So Robin, thank you so much for taking the time out to be able to speak to us at the conference today and share some of your insight. Over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the very warm welcome there, Janet. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with yourselves this morning. So I've got a very short presentation that I'd like to share with you all today. Janet, can I just double check that you can see that perfectly well?
Absolutely, we've got that, Robin. I don't know whether yep, perfect.
Oh, actually, I didn't do share with sound. Let me just do that ever so
Oh,
briefly.
let's do that. We don't want to
Yeah,
miss that bit.
we don't want to miss that part, do we? So, right, lovely. Yes. Okay, how's that, Janet? Can you see everything okay?
Absolutely perfect,
Yeah.
Robin. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And just thank you to everyone who's joined this morning. And as Janet says, I currently work at the University of Northampton as a senior lecturer in social welfare. And I've got a real passion for um, every aspect, all elements of learning and education, really, and teaching across a range of different programs. And really, really pleased to be part of this student conference. And today's a really interesting day in terms of journeys, beginnings and middle and ends. My daughter went off to school today as her last day at senior school to complete one of her final GCSEs, and it really got me thinking about the quality and the importance of education and what it does for so many of us, and the significance of taking opportunities where we can to develop knowledge and expertise and interest in education in the early years, and what that does for us in terms of our career progression, how we can take advantage of our qualifications and training, but also to give us the opportunity. And I think I read this in a very recent report, Janet, that you were part of, which was around changing the narrative. And one of the things that we hold quite dearly to us at the University of Northampton in terms of what we do is changing the narrative for infants, children, young people and families, and from the moment we start interacting with them. So I've got some PowerPoint slides that I'd like to share with you. And as we go through today, as we go through this sort of next short while, if you've got any questions, please feel free to use the chat on the right hand side, and I'll do my very best to answer them as we go along. So as I said to you, I'm gonna spend a little bit of time just talking you through a bit about why this area is so important, and why investing not just financially but emotionally, cognitively, and what have you in the early years in education is so important in order to be able to enrich our professional practice and have a really good quality impact on the outcomes for children, young people and families across their lives. Okay, so to start with, I like to sort of change and take slightly different approaches to teaching sometimes and learning. So I'm going to run a a 60-second timer for you, and you might think this is a bit odd, but I'm gonna talk through some things with you as we go along. So you'll hear some sound as it goes along, and over the next 60 seconds, something will happen across the world about 267 times. So if you sit back for sort of just the next 45 seconds and be thinking, okay, so across the globe, something will be happening 267 times. So as you're sat there and sort of looking out your window and enjoying the sunshine, or sort of sipping through your cup of tea or coffee, or working out what you're doing for the rest of the evening or the rest of the day, something really significant and something really important across the globe is happening 267 times. So just the last 10 seconds for you to start to think about what that might be. So 267 times something happens across the globe. It's really significant and really important. Okay. Right, let me just pause that. So using your chat on the right hand side, and anyone feel free to contribute here. What do you think has just happened 267 times across the globe? Now I can't see the chat, so Janet, hopefully you were able to see any answers that pop up. So
Yes, I
anyone,
can confirm that.
fantastic, thank you. So anyone's feel free to pop into the chat. What's just happened across the globe 267 times? Any
Well,
thoughts? What that?
yeah, comments are already coming in, Robin, and
Okay, go for
Renata,
it.
Renata has added handshakes. People are
Handshakes. Okay.
embracing each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Okay. So nice start. Okay. Any other comments coming in so far?
Yes, a lot of people are looking towards babies being born.
Good, lovely, fantastic. Right, a nice round of applause to you all. You're absolutely right. So over the last 60 seconds, a baby will have been born 267 times. And for those of you who've calculated it, over the next half an hour, just over 8,000 babies would have been born across the globe. And the reason that that's really, really important, the reason that we highlight that and draw attention to that so early on, is because it is one of the most important aspects of a child's life. The moment that they're conceived and born, and their period up to 2 years old is so crucial. And the reason that we talk about this, not just part of our studies at the University of Northampton, but in the sector of early years and education, is because this period of time has one of the most important influences on our life journey. And the reason that that's really, really important is because our roles within the sector, within early years and education, can have one of the most significant influences on the outcomes for children, young people, and families across their lives. And this is emphasized probably in one of the most important images that are used throughout studies at University of Northampton. And on the left hand side is a place in southern France, and it's called Monaco. And Monaco is probably one of the most richest city states, microstates in the world. It has an incredible amount of wealth and what have you. On the right hand side is a country called Chad, and Chad is the Republic of Chad is an independent country. It sits right in the sort of central of Africa as a continent, and there are some distinctions between these two countries, these two areas, and these are reflective of the life expectancy for babies born in Monaco and babies born in Chad. So using the chat on the right hand side again, any thoughts as to what your life expectancy might be if you were born in Monaco in 2024? So again, Janet, if you can read out any answers, that would be lovely. So
Absolutely, will do.
any thoughts as to what life expectancy might be is if you were born in Monaco in 2024?
Oh, 87, 80, 90, 98. We're
Yeah,
high, we're high.
we're high, we're high.
84, 90, 85. So
Good.
we
In the
are
80s.
yeah, we've got a 76, 82. Yeah.
Good. Lovely. Thank you very much. And then this follow-up question is for those children that are born in 2024 in Chad, what do you think the life expectancy might be? Any thoughts as to what that might be, folks? Feel free to use the chat on the right-hand side to start adding some answers in. Yeah, people hurriedly checking Google Scholar, Google and what have you, just check in to see. That's what I would be doing right now.
We're going significantly lower, Robin. So
Yeah.
we have sort of ranging from 50 through to the highest at the moment, registering at 67.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, beautiful. Right. So statistically, if you're a child born in Monaco in 2024, your life expectancy is about 87.1 years. And if you are a child born in Chad in 2024, your life expectancy is about 53.68. The reason, well, one, the reason that that is so important for us to draw our attention to is because the starts in life that children have can be determined by so many different factors. And one of the things that this evidence, this research tells us, not just about global outcomes for infants as to where they're born, but also life projections and life outcomes and life expectancy, is that the environment in which infants are conceived and born in have a profound influence on their life expectancy and their opportunities and outcomes. And what this should do to all of us working, teaching, studying in the areas of early childhood studies and education is a call to action for us to do and be the very best practitioners we can be in changing the narrative around the impact of our work on the early years and education sector. So one of the things that we really emphasize as part of our studies at the University of Northampton is, what does the environment do in terms of impact of outcomes for children, young people and families? How can it influence, and how does it influence their life expectancies, their opportunities in life, and what can we do as practitioners and professionals to be able to change the narrative through developing our career, through developing our knowledge and expertise in this area? And in England and Wales, we have a range of different policies and practices that really shape and attempt to change the narrative, attempt to change the distinctions and differences between outcomes for children who are born in different areas. And one of the things that holds together and binds together what we want to do and what we need to do as practitioners is one of the most important policies that came out in the last 10 to 15 years. And I'm sure so many of you have heard of this already. The significance and impact of the first 1,001 critical days. And it was a policy manifesto that came out many years ago and has been recently updated with the best start for life. And research from the Harvard Centre, research from the DFE, research from the Department for Health and Social Care, amongst many others, tells us about the importance of those first 1,001 critical days. And when we're sat with students, when we're sat with practitioners, when we're sat with people and we ask them, well, what do they think the first 1,001 critical days are? Many people will think about, well, it's from the moment an infant or baby is born. And actually, the research tells us that from the moment infants and babies are conceived, that is when the first 1,001 critical days begins. And it is this period of time from the moment of conception up to 2 years old, which really reflects one of the most vulnerable, but also one of the most opportunistic periods, critical periods for infants to be able to develop that scaffolded learning, that scaffolded development emotionally, cognitively, socially, physically, for their lives. And so throughout our courses and throughout the sector, the emphasis really is around what role do we have as early years practitioners, as nursery workers, as social workers, as teachers, as youth workers, and as educators, to be able to offer and ensure that that period of time is protected, is contains the opportunity for parents to be able to develop sensitive, loving relationships with their infants. And this is where your role comes in, our role comes in offering parents the opportunities to be able to develop those really important skills of nurturing, of sensitive caregiving, and knowing how and when to respond to and recognise when families might be in need of additional support and services. And one of the things that we've noticed at the University of Northampton, we have the opportunity. I'm going to talk about some of our courses slots very shortly, but one of the things we've noticed with our courses at the University of Northampton, so we take our students, our second year students, to Sweden every year. And we take them to Belgium in their first year, and we look at the different models of childcare, of nursery care, of education, of social work across the globe. And what's really interesting is how the Scandinavian countries, particularly Sweden and Finland, approach family, and they place a huge emphasis not only on play, and this is something that you will have come across as part of your studies, but also about honesty and trust and love. And there's a real emphasis in the very early days, even before an infant is, a baby's conceived, around the emphasis on nurturing, loving relationships. So as I go on to start to talk about some of our courses, you'll see that, you know, if you're looking further ahead to start thinking about future studies, one of the things that we do at the University of Northampton is really think about, what does it mean to be an infant being born or conceived in a Scandinavian country like Sweden? What kind of life opportunities are there? And we start to really think about, well, what is that period of time that's really, really critical, certainly for the future development of an infant's brain and their social and emotional development. So the first 1,001 critical days is probably one of the most important policy directives that came out of lots and lots of research, and it guides so much of our work, and it guides so much of the courses that we deliver at the University of Northampton as well. So it's not just the 1,001 critical days as a policy directive that we use to inform how we best prepare our students to go into practice, professional practice through the development, but also an emphasis on lots of other things to include policy, but also parenting. And I'm sure many of you have come across lots of emphasis in policy documents, in laws around the development of the child's brain and their cognitive skills, their linguistic skills. But on our courses, we also think quite respectfully and empathically about the importance of nurturing parents as well. And I recall back to my days as a full-time practicing social worker, and we would always be spending as much time as we could with the parents to be able to bolster their skills, to be able to support their skills and develop those skills in becoming a nurturing, loving parent, because some of them might not have experienced that in their early childhood themselves. So not only do we think on our courses around the importance of policy for developing and supporting infant development, we also think about the importance of parenting as well. So there are some central threads to how we best support our developing workforce, yourselves and ourselves, which focus around the importance of brain development, the relevance of policy and parenting, and we use the most up-to-date knowledge around brain architecture from the Harvard Center to help us support students to develop a really powerful working knowledge of what it means to develop those sensitive, nurturing relationships in the very early years. And I've had a really good look at NCFE website, and I can see there are some beautiful comparisons and threads to the kind of work that we do at the University of Northampton, which around changing the narrative, I think, is probably one of the most important things that cuts across your work, Janet, at the NCFE, and also our work at the University of Northampton around providing students with the skills and opportunities to have the greatest impact that they can have. But we're not we're not without appreciation of the fact that lots of families that we work with and the students that we teach to go and work with those families will often have a lot of histories in the past which influence how they parent. So we draw on some of the most latest of research and knowledge with a critical lens. So we look at some of the research around adverse childhood experiences and see how they might affect the way in which parents can be parents, and note language things like might. So we never get into this mindset of thinking that just because parents experience adverse childhood experiences that they're going to repeat that cycle. So we use some of the most latest of research and knowledge to help us understand how early adversity might affect the parents' parenting of their children. We use all that to be able to help us inform the application of policy, right from the early years right through to the youth work sector. So we use lots and lots of really good quality research. And not only do we use the research that tells us that these are the potential negative outcomes, we also use lots and lots of high quality research that helps us understand that we can change and do change the narrative and do change the script. And Dan Siegel's work here is really quite important, because Dan Siegel's work from an attachment-based perspective tells us that actually parents may well have experienced adversity in their early childhood, but it's what we can do as professionals in the early years and education sector to support them to make sense of what's happened to them, and know that no cycle is going to repeat itself with the right sort of therapeutic and support intervention. So we use lots and lots of research, lots and lots of useful knowledge to be able to enhance the skills of our students on our programs. And I know that many of you will be doing T-levels at the moment and thinking about next steps and what have you. And I'm going to touch on a little bit of that as I come towards the end, because I think time is a little bit tight. So there are some really important takeaway points when it comes to the kind of the essence of what we teach at university. And some of it will be very similar to what you cover on your qualifications, your T levels themselves. But the emphasis here, I suppose, for us as a central thread to all of the teaching that we do, to all the work that we do, that change is possible, our ability to adapt and change. And I've got no doubt, lots of you as students have had journeys throughout life where you perhaps confronted adversity. We know that from our programs, that lots of students come onto our programs having experienced adversity in their lives. And what we want as students, we want you to be able to go away with this sense that adaptation is possible, our ability to be able to adapt and change and effect change is really possible. We want our students to go and take that to their work environments with them, whether it be in an early years sector, in a preschool, in a social work setting, or a youth work setting. So with all that in mind, and with the knowledge around what we know around those first 1,001 critical days and your qualifications, your T levels, I took the liberty of having a look on our website and noticed that almost entirely all of our undergraduate programs that are related to things like early education, early years, and youth work and social work all accept T levels as an entry point on the same standing as kind of A levels and what have you. So that was really good. I noticed that our early years, early childhood studies, as well as our social work setting degrees and our working with children, young people and families, all accept T levels. So everything that you've been learning so far on your T levels, everything that we've talked about today, actually threads in quite nicely into sort of next steps, really, as to where you'd like to go and where you want to see yourselves. I think I shared with Janet on a podcast I did some while ago. If I didn't, I'll share it again now anyway. That I did terribly in my GCSEs, even worse in my A levels. And it was luckily that I did something very similar to a T level a few years ago. It wasn't a T level because it hadn't been invented then, but I did something very similar. It was almost like an access course, and it was that course that got me galvanized, that got me sparked, that got me interested in working with infants, families, and children. And it was the university experience that then really cemented where I wanted to go. So I'm really pleased to say that nearly all of our courses accept T levels. I took the liberty of having a look at on the government website and can see that we're one of the providers of degrees who accept T levels, and all of our early childhood studies degrees, working with children, young people and families, and our social work degrees accept T levels. Now, here's an additional thing for you to think about. Assuming you go on to university and do an undergraduate degree, we've recently been running a postgraduate certificate in advanced practice in infant mental health and wellbeing, and this is a 1-year postgraduate course. So always be thinking 1 or 2, 3 steps ahead. It's always important to do that. So if you feel really galvanized around studying early childhood studies or social work or youth work at Northampton or wherever, really, we also offer a range of different programs, including the postgraduate certificate in infant mental health and wellbeing. Okay, so there's one slide I just wanted to end with. I found this and I thought it was really beautiful. It was by a very famous practitioner, early years practitioner, Magda Gerber, who said, "Let the child be the scriptwriter, the director, and the actor of his or her or their own play." So she was an early years educator and was passionate about teaching parents and caregivers how to understand babies on a very sort of intuitive level. So Janet, there's a very quick whistle stop tour of why this area of study is so important, and I hope that's been useful in terms of a bit of a toe dip into the sector itself, and why we get very fired up about infancy and relationships and what have you. So
Absolutely, Robin. Thank you
yeah,
so much. We do
that's
have
okay.
lots and lots of
End slash,
positive
yeah,
thoughts and so on within the chat. But there is one question that, and I'll take it, Angie, and because it's
yeah,
looking at, I'm right on it.
yes,
So I know Angie was going to do the chat, but I'm just looking at it and thinking about it myself. So
yeah.
you talked about adversity and adaptation. And we have a question that is quite interesting. Is there any difference in adaptation following that adversity in
Yeah.
from girls and boys? You know, do you find a difference in the way that
Oh, okay.
interesting, isn't it?
Is there a gender difference, or sex difference rather, in terms of the adaptation
Yeah.
between girls and boys? I don't know the answer to that question, Vivette. It's a really interesting one. I mean, what we know is that boys tend to take longer for their brain to finally develop. I think males' brain development concludes around mid to late, or mid-20s, whereas females tend to have completed brain development slightly earlier. In terms of a sex difference about how they respond to adversity, it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. It's an interesting one to raise, and it's worth certainly us thinking about. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's something for us to think seriously about, Janet,
Interesting.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I love the Magda quote's brilliant, isn't it? Lovely. Yeah.
Absolutely makes you think, stop and reflect and just get things into perspective, doesn't it? I think it's really
Yeah.
important. It's not our agenda, it's their agenda, and how can we best support? We've also had comments about the fantastic 1001 days,
Yeah.
and people expressing an interest to find out more and how
Yeah.
that can be used and applied in their own practice, which is fantastic, and a
Yeah.
lot of interest around the courses that you've talked about as well. I'm just
Yeah.
going to bring Angie in
Okay.
to field any further questions. Thanks,
Yeah.
Robin.
No problem. No problem at all. Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Janet.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Robin. And there's been some real great positivity throughout the chat, throughout your
Yeah.
talk. So absolutely brilliant. I'd just like to highlight, I wonder how many babies have been born since you first started your presentation to where we are now. Just think about that and the impact. It's made me really think, Robin, and I'm
Yeah.
sure it has within the chat as well.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to highlight and get your comments on it, how you would feel that, you know, the difference that everybody within this group today that is in attendance, the difference that they could possibly make on all those babies that have, you know,
Absolutely.
thinking about those babies that have been born.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as part of our postgraduate course, we've got a student who works in a neonatal unit, and I didn't realise that 1 in 7 babies now have to go to a neonatal unit, which is incredibly high. And she was saying and talking about the role of parents and families in terms of nurturing and loving relationships in those very early days, and how that need to go onto a neonatal unit can really compromise and challenge that. And yeah, but it's yeah, so it's 8,010 babies by the end of a half an hour. In a whole day period, it's 330,000. So it's just incredible. It's just incredible to get your head around, like that many babies are born, and but knowing that so many of us will be having an impact on the parents that are going to have those babies, and those babies in whatever setting we find ourselves. So
Absolutely. I
yes,
think one more question has just come through, actually. Again,
yeah,
just thanking you for that. I think the het as well, talking about the ADHD and the
yes, yeah.
impact of that as well, and talking about, again, males and females. So
Mm,
really interesting topic. I think you've got everybody's minds whirring there.
that's brilliant. We look, I mean, I love the 1001 critical days. It's just brilliant. It's a fantastic policy framework, and it's something that's been championed, by the government in their rollout with the Family Hub network and what have you. So we whatever colour political party comes in July, that they continue with that agenda. I'm sure as you do at NCFE as well, that
Absolutely.
you know, because it you know, it really helps guide and inform our work, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the word there is critical, isn't it? And so that just says it all. But Robin, I just want to take this opportunity again to say thank you, for your time and for sharing so generously the wealth of knowledge and experience, and the insight of all of the fantastic work that is going on at the University of Northampton.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Sorry, it was a whistle stop
Brilliant.
tour.
It's brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
I'll
Thank you
stay
so
for a little
much.
bit. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay, cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye, Robin. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and we're going to think about things from a slightly different perspective. So we've looked at that sort of wider impact, the wider influence, the critical importance of the work that we do, and the impact that that can have. And we're going to now hear a professional voice. So we're going to hear from Mandy Richardson and Sian Stratton from Naturally Learning. And they're going to give us a professional voice talking about the nurseries that they work within. So let me tell you a little bit about Naturally Learning before we hear from Mandy and Sian themselves. So Naturally Learning nurseries embed an ethos based on child-centred care and development with a strong nature-based practice. Mandy has worked in early years for her entire career as teacher, consultant, and now as owner and managing director of a group of 6 nurseries down in the southwest of England. Sian has worked in early years for 24 years with previous experience as nursery owner. Sian has worked in children's centres with Ofsted and now works with Naturally Learning to develop training, support and quality. Ladies, it's fantastic to have you on board, and I'm going to hand straight over to you. Naturally Learning, where children grow. Excellent.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone. It's lovely to be invited to talk here, and it's so very exciting to be following on from what Robin had to say, because I was really thrilled to hear the comments that he was making and the sort of training that is available for people, because it's something that I believe passionately about, that we're not ever going to get the workforce of people working with our youngest, most vulnerable children unless we have the right training in place, which is why in Naturally Learning we are developing a focus on continued learning throughout all of our careers, and which is why Sian is part of the team now, delivering on that for us. So yeah, I'm going to chat through some of the things that that we do at Naturally Learning. We started the business, well, I started the business about 12 years ago now, and from it there was always a real need in me to provide something different, something that really thought about the child, and it took a little while to establish it, but we now have what we consider to be a really sort of set in stone, robust mission statement that we all believe in. And this is where we start with our children, wanting that all children within our time to grow, but at their own time. We want them to have opportunities to play and explore, to talk, to discover, to investigate, and to be confident people who know how to question, ask, wonder and learn. Really lovely. It fits in really well with that Magda Gerber quote that Robin used. We do allow our children to be creators of their own journey. So our values are based around being totally child-centered. The decisions we make every day are based around children. They are, sorry, we believe in having respectful relationships with our children, with each other and with their families. The opportunities that we offer our children are authentic. We'll talk a little bit more about these in a minute. And we have a real need to be sustainable for the future of our world as an additional value that we bring in. These things are all skills for life. These are things that we're teaching our children as early as babies when they come into us. Some of them might be. We have had children as young as 4 months joining us. But these children are going to be taking these values with them into their future. So our child-centered approach, we ask ourselves every day, is what we're doing right for the child? We're put in positions all the time in a really busy working nursery to know, to make a decision, split-second decision, and sometimes, with all the best will in the world, an adult might make the decision that is easier for them. So we have to challenge that and say to our educators, is that decision that you've made right for the child? What impact is your decision making going to have on the child? This is fitting in very much with the whole talk around children's attachment and the children's need to have that really, really close relationship with other adults out of the home. They have these really good relationships at home, but when they're coming to us, we need to step in and be that person. So that we want our day for the child to be holistic. We want it to flow. It's not about having subject times or areas. Their learning is one big development. It's around their bodies, it's around their minds, it's around their emotions. It's the whole picture of the child, and we need to consider that in everything that we do on a daily basis with our children.
Yeah, so we make sure that our relationships from adults with children are reflective, and Mandy's mentioned respectful and also supportive. And I think something Mandy really strives for is that the staff are present with the children, that they're giving them that time, because children actually want that time and that understanding. So we want our team to be the best they can. We want our educators to continue to learn and grow, and we want them to develop that knowledge. So we often reflect with them about what's working well, what isn't. The senior leadership team in the company go in quite regularly and we help them reflect on the planning, on the environment, on the space, what we're offering, and making sure that children have time to really wallow in those things that are important to them, with adults supporting the learning. I'll give you an example. When I first came to one of the settings, there's a bathtub, which is actually a pond in one of our forest spaces. And the children were using a book to look up what type of frogs were in the pond. They were 3. I was blown away that these children were able to tell me what species of frogs. I think they were pink-backed frogs, but it's just something that's really important in naturally learning, is that the educators give those children that kind of knowledge in a way that's completely led by them through nature. So we make sure that they're supporting them at all opportunities.
These relationships as well go on to working with our families, because we are very aware that the parents are the child's first educator. They are their primary attachment, and it really is important to us that we work closely with the families and that we try and help them to reflect and understand what it is that their children are going through, how they're learning, how they're growing, and trying to give the information to the parents that we have, because nobody gets trained to be a parent. We are the professionals. We have spent our careers learning, and parents haven't. On the whole, parents haven't. They've come to this job with no support. So we do believe it really is our job to do that as well, and to support our parents, you know. And also we need to be modeling these sorts of relationships with each other. So as a team, we have to be respectful and supportive of one another as well. The word authentic in our core values is really important to me and to the team. what we believe is that children really learn from hands-on real experiences. Everything we do is real. Children can touch it, they can smell it, they can use all their senses to become involved in the learning. It's not looking, we do use books, and we, as Sian said, we'll look things up, we'll learn things, but that will be alongside the real experience. You won't find within one of our settings laminated photographs of how a plant grows. What you will find is children planting the seeds, watering them, watching them grow, and then harvesting from them. That's the sort of thing you would expect to see, because children learn from those real experiences. We're not talking something new. This is actually really good old-fashioned teaching. This is how, as a child, I learned, by my mother particularly, allowing me to literally get my hands dirty and get in and get involved. Our resources, we believe, should be of the highest quality, the best we can afford to buy for our children, because we want things that last, which fits very much in with our sustainable ethos, but also we want children to be able to feel the materials, smell the materials, hear the sounds they make. We use a lot of things, therefore, that are not single-use plastic, but very beautifully made and crafted materials, some of which we'll get from charity shops. We don't have to spend a lot of money in order to get high quality.
And they're very open-ended.
Yes, and yes, so these things we use are mostly designed for other purposes, and the children will use them. And anybody who's got children of their own might recall that a child would love nothing better than to open your cupboard that has got pots and pans in it and pull them all out. They want the real. They don't want the plastic version that you set up for them. And sustainable, the fourth one, was a fairly new one actually to be added, because you believe when you're working with young children and we're getting these children ready for the world, these children are our future, and it's really impossible to ignore the issues and the concerns around sustainability and around our own environment. So it would be very foolish of us to ignore that. So we have woven that into what we do every day, and our staff teach our children to have a genuine consideration for the environment. You can see in the photo there, Sian was talking about a bathtub pond. This is a bathtub kitchen garden in one of our sites, where we're reusing products, things that were ready to go on the scrap heap, and the children love that. It's hilarious for them. We deliberately kept the taps on to allow a bit of humour to go with it. So our kitchen garden has 4 bathtubs full of things growing for our children to use and to bring into the kitchens to create foods for our lunches. The other day, I was in this particular nursery where the photo was taken. Sian and I were both there, and this little lad was so proud to bring to show us his chard that he had grown and picked and was taken to the chef to turn into something that they would then eat at their lunch. As adults, we reduce, reuse and recycle wherever possible, and we don't use things like wet wipes. We use reusable, they're called cheeky wipes, that we use for nappy changing, amongst other things. We really consider what it is that we use, and there's a huge respect throughout our whole ethos of respecting the natural world and playing in and enjoying the natural world. We believe that if children are beginning to play in it, they'll learn to love it. If they love it, they'll want to understand it. And if they understand it, then they will want to save it, to protect it. And that's where we start from. So these aspects run through our ethos. These are things that we promise to our team, we promise to our children, we promise to their families. I will whiz through those with you because I am aware of the limited time we have, but these are core to everything we do every day.
Yeah. So we focus a lot with our educators on understanding the importance of early brain development. We do a lot of training around this in-house. We talk about the impact of relationships on that. 10 minutes of a baby crying releases so much cortisol to those children. And for us, I was in a nursery yesterday and the manager kept jumping up because we could hear this baby getting very distressed and angry. And in the end, we had her in the office with us because she was much more content in a kind of calmer space for that while of the day. We want to make sure that the staff really understand that by the time a child is 4, the most growth has happened in their brain. So we really put a focus of importance on nutrition, interactions, and making sure children feel secure and safe. And that's really our fundamental core values around the brain development and how we support those children.
We want our staff to understand that, and as Sian says, she is now leading on a lot of our training to make sure that all our team understand that, because without that understanding, I don't believe you can do the best possible job. So we start by nurturing these children. Robin was talking earlier, he used the word nurture in what he was saying, which is wonderful to hear, because it is so important that our children are nurtured, they feel safe, they are respected, they feel comfortable. Because if they don't have those feelings, if that's not where they are starting from, we cannot do anything with them. If their cortisol levels are raised, as Sian was saying, that 10 minutes of crying is going to get them completely stressed, then they are not going to learn. We all know that none of us learn if we're stressed, if we're hungry. And it's just the same for our children. So we've got to get this right from the start. We understand that they are individuals and that their little personalities are developing alongside their physical growth. And we need to understand those pieces, which is why we need to respect and understand and offer them respectful caregiving. We say to our children, can we change your nappy? Can I wipe your nose? And we tell them what it is we're going to do them. I have in my past seen times where an adult will swoop in from behind and whisk a child up with no warning and whisk them away to have a nappy changed, completely upsetting a child. We need to respect this time and ask them their permission. Of course, they're not going to reply, but we are asking their permission and explaining to them what we're going to do to them, and talk while we're doing that, offering support and understanding, because nappy time is not necessarily always the child's favourite time, but we are the person who can make that so. We think about their health, their hygiene, how we care for them. All those routines are really, really important. And as they learn and grow, we will give them the opportunities to become physically independent themselves, encouraging them to be involved in these care times and care routines, allowing them to climb up onto a nappy changing table, help get the nappies ready from their bag, involve them in this very early importance of being independent. Oh, we seem to have lost the rest of my slides here. I'm very sorry. I don't know what's happened here, but I've gone on to somebody else's slides.
Okay, just coming on. So I'm just going to reach out to Stacey, who's manning. Do we have the next slide available, Stace?
I'm just double checking, but I think those are the only ones that we had transferred in. So just give me a second. But I'm sure we've got some things to talk about because everything that you said has just been wonderful. But hang on 2 seconds while I see if I can retrieve them.
I can continue to talk without slides. I don't need them if that helps.
Or we can go to some questions if you like. We've got
Okay.
a few that can I just first of all say it's been wonderful, and there's been some real positivity coming through the chat, and I'm just going to mention a few, and it goes back to that authenticness and the natural approach, where we've got people sharing their experiences of children really interacting with nature, sort of really touching the koi carp within the garden. We've had one person talking about their experiences of bringing the bear hunt rhyme and story to life through the children actually experiencing what it's like to step through squishy mud, and all of those types of things. So I love the stories and the experiences that are coming through, even right down to a comment that we've had is just a simple thing, is just creating that lovely atmosphere through singing during nappy changing time or whatever it may be, and creating that real calm approach. One thing that a question that I will put forward is this is such a wonderful nurturing aspect, and may come through in your presentation a bit later, but that your relationship that you have with the parents to bring them involved within your values.
Oh, here we go. Yes, so with our parents, we make sure that from that very first time they come to the nursery, we really explain that this is where we come from. This is what is embedded in our practice, and this is what you will expect. As we go on, you'll see some of the things we do are a little bit outside of the box, and parents need to understand that this is what we believe in. If it's not for them, we would encourage them maybe to not come to us, because if they aren't on board with us and we don't feel we can help them to understand, then sometimes they choose to go elsewhere, which is fine. I'd rather them come to us because I know we get it right, but if they don't believe that yet, that's fine. And sometimes, interestingly, I have had families who've looked around, chosen not to come to us, chosen something a little bit more traditional, and then quite quickly come back to us when they realise what it is that we're offering. Very interested in that, though. It is a good question, and we have to believe in it. Our team have to believe in it, and by them believing in it, it will happen every day. Because if it doesn't and it gets watered down, it doesn't have the impact that is needed. So yeah, it's really important to get that early with the parents, and we do talk to the parents. Our handovers, our communications with the parents are very, very, again, really authentic. We will tell them what it is we're seeing and hearing and learning from their children, and we share throughout the day through the use of a communication app the sorts of things their children are doing. One of the things we within our nurture and care is our real understanding of sleep, and to us sleep is vital, and the research that is around sleep and the importance of it for brain development is fundamental to us, and it's a little bit of a non-negotiable. We will let children sleep when they need to sleep. We don't force it when they don't want it. We don't have sleep time. We follow the child's lead on sleep. And we will, one of our biggest battles, as it were, with some parents is they will not like their child to nap for more than half an hour because it might ruin the nighttime sleep. And trying to explain that is quite a difficult one, because research has shown that that isn't the case. Parents think that because a child slept in the day, they're not going to sleep at night, and that isn't necessarily the case. So it is a bit of a battle that we do have, I have to say, but we do stick to our guns with that one because we know how very important it is. Okay.
Lovely, thank you. I'll let you carry on now because I think the slides are back, so thank you for that.
But I'm not sure that I've got the ability to move them on.
No, I've been moving them anyway, Mandy. So if you let me know, if you let me know when you want me to move on.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, so we know the importance of the environment. That's one of our other key parts of our ethos. The Maria Montessori quote here basically sums up everything that we believe, that we must provide them with the environment that they need to develop freely. So our own environments, on the next slide, are that we create a very neutral environment for our children, because the colour and the excitement will come from the children themselves. Our environments are calm, but they have opportunities within them to stimulate. Each room is created with a place to rest, a place to be quiet, things to stimulate, places to quietly communicate, places to completely get involved, completely involve themselves in the learning, full body involvement in the learning. All those things matter, and each room is created with a feel for that age group. On the next slide, obviously this is a tiny baby room, so everything is very low. Our rooms have got everything that are accessible on the shelves so that the children can see them. Resources aren't stored away in cupboards. We don't have lots and lots of stuff. It's quite, I suppose, fairly minimalistic. The next slide as well will show you how these are where our things are stored. Children can see what they want. They can't always reach them because not everything can be in reach, but they can gesture, they can ask for it. You can also see there, we've got windows that are low, so the children can gesture and request to go outside whenever they want, have that genuine free flow in or out. Our sand pits, which are on the floor, you can see at the front of that picture, are low, and the children can get right in them. They've full body involvement in them. Then the outdoor learning is hugely important for us. As I said, we believe that children need to be immersed in nature and develop a really respectful relationship with it and learn to value their natural world. All of our sites obviously have gardens. Beyond that, we use our wider environment, because the outdoor is so important, because it creates a different type of learning, a different sort of feel to being indoors. You can bring in outdoor things in, but it never feels quite the same as actually being outdoors. So what we don't do is we don't take indoor learning out, we do different learning out. We don't sort of just take the indoor resources and put them in the garden. It's about learning in a very different way when you're outside. There's huge opportunities for large scale movement that just isn't possible in an indoor space. You're feeling the changes in the weather. You know, whether it's hot, cold, windy, rainy, snowy, all those things, you sense them, physically sense them. We're not talking about the weather from behind closed doors, we're actually experiencing it. We're taking them out, giving them the opportunities to take risks and assess their risks, and giving them the opportunities to build their resilience, because some of our outdoor areas, especially our forests that we use and the beaches that we take our children to regularly, offer quite a challenge, a physical challenge to walk. You know, just the other evening I was on the beach myself, a very pebbly beach near to where I live, and it's actually really hard work walking across a pebbly beach. You know, at my ripe old age, I struggle. So you imagine a child just learning to walk. That is a really challenging skill for them to learn, but the resilience of getting up and having a go is a skill for life. Our next slide, just taking a bit about the sorts of things that outdoors offers. So it offers free play at its best. Children can just investigate and play with limited adult involvement. Free play is such an great opportunity for children to just practice the skills that they have learned in other areas of their life and through adult structured activities. So just being allowed to play is so important, and we then as the adult can sit and observe and learn so much from watching that free play. Our outdoors on the next slide offer us as well a really great opportunity for children to have a calm and focused time. The outdoors is nice and peaceful, especially in our forests. They do have a sense of peace, and we can do more focused learning. The focused opportunities are always available for the children to go to, and with the support of an adult can really deeply dig into deeper further learning. The opportunities are presented to them. And of course, the outdoors offers the whole body approach. So there's a lot of physical things. Pictures on our next slide will show you children having, again, opportunities that they wouldn't have indoors, to have that full whole body experience of being outside. And lastly, for our outdoors, is they can be truly magical. Whenever I walk into one of our forests, I have been doing this for so many years now, but I never ever take for granted that magical feel that you feel when you go into a forest, the light shining through the trees or the rain coming through the trees. No matter what the weather, there is magic out there, and the children can experience this daily, and it just grows them. There's a lot of talk about, as adults, how we need to be outside to improve our well-being, and the same is for our children. It really creates a very different atmosphere for the children, and some of our most challenging children who have got behavioural concerns and additional needs, specifically children as well with sort of sensory needs. The outdoors has such a profound effect on their development, and you can watch their growth so amazingly through this. I've got so many stories of how children have been supported to access learning through being outdoors.
Especially those who have challenging behaviour, actually.
Yeah, it just changes everything. We talked a little bit earlier about resources we use being real. As you can see in that photograph, we do spend a lot of time in charity shops, one of my favourite things to do, to provide these things. Using metal or wood or glass with children is so special because it brings with it different properties. No matter what it is that you use with children that is made of plastic, it will always feel like plastic. It's always light, it's always got the same sort of temperature, it has the same sort of feel. Whereas using like these little metal stainless steel things, if the weather's cold, they are cold. If the weather's warm, they warm up. They're reflective. They can see their reflections in them. They are loud. You can bang on them. They are multi-sensory resources. Just by having metal as opposed to plastic, you are not only helping to save the planet, but you are providing multi-sensory opportunities through just giving them those things to play with. We use these resources here, in the nursery. They give them the opportunity to discover and investigate. They're interesting resources. They look weird. What is this that I've got? What could it be used for? What am I going to use it for? The weight is vital. Yeah. Shana's got a wonderful story I'll leave to her about babies and weight.
Yeah. I did. I was an Ofsted inspector, as my beginning explained, and I did inspect naturally learning nurseries back in the day. And I was watching a baby in the baby room pick up a glass jug, and they hadn't realised how heavy it was going to be. And the shock on their face as they tried to lift it, and it sort of pulled their arm down, was like, oh. And then they started to use their kind of dexterity to lift it, and you could see them feeling really pleased that they'd got hold of it and lifted it upright. Then they were using it to scoop, and each moment that they achieved this new sort of skill, their little face just lit up so much. And I just remember thinking, I don't often see that in nurseries. And for me, it was kind of revolutionary as to why using some of these more natural products, the natural adult world, actually inspire children a lot more than the things we think they might need from the shops that are plastic, etc. So for me, that was an eye-opening moment.
Yeah, and the picture there of the two children making their soup, that pot, I don't know if you can get from that picture, but it's massive. I think it is originally probably a very large jam making pot, and it's very thick based so you don't burn the jam. And it is so heavy, I struggle to lift it myself. So those children will have to work together and to pick that up. They're going to have to collaborate with each other, work together in order to do that. So these are the large scale things. And then moving on, we have opportunities for them to play with lots of resources that are much smaller in their loose parts play. So they can count, they can sort, they can create pictures using small stuff that is designed for other things, but really very open-ended for the children. One of the other core values we have is around our food. Good nutrition is fundamental for the healthy physical and brain development of our children. So food is key to everything we do. Our menus are seasonal, created using as much local produce as we can. They are used, we use, as I touched on earlier, some of the things we've grown ourselves. We don't grow a lot, it's very small, but what we'll do with the children is if they've grown 2 tiny little carrots, we will use those carrots and the extra that we've had to buy alongside, but at least the children know that the carrots have come from their garden and how they've grown, and they'll end up having that sort of understanding. And by preparing their own food and serving their own food, they really have a very deep understanding of it and enjoyment of it. We use real crockery, real cutlery, and we encourage the children to serve themselves sitting around a family style mealtime. It's also very much used for seasonal exploration. You can see the photograph of the little girl there is celebrating using it's a cream tea. So in Cornwall, obviously, cream teas are very, very big to us. And on St. Piran's Day, we'll always have scones and jam along with our pasties, and the children get involved with that. And of course, as you can see, she is putting jam on first because we teach them that very early on. Our staff, the most important resource. We are nothing without them. Our staff do everything and support our children at each stage of their journey. They have to be the model of good morals, good language, good behaviours. So our staff need to be the best they can be, and they are always on a journey of further learning. We encourage our team to continue to grow, to take degrees, to take postgraduate degrees. We're all learners and we all want to continue to learn in our team. I was the oldest person when I did my masters. I was the oldest person on the course, but I was still very proud to achieve it. So staff are so important. So our children, the babies, they nurture and care and offer those children those early attachments. As they get a little bit older, they are standing back and allowing our children to grow and move away from them, but they are still there as the secure base for them to come back to. I particularly love the photograph there of the young lady in the background with her arm around one child. It was a pretty lively storytelling session, getting a little bit scary. As you can see, all the children in the foreground are absolutely loving the fear factor. This one little one was struggling to join in with it. The practitioner there, the educator in the photo, only an apprentice at the time, noticed and moved herself to sit with him to support him through that so he could still be part of it. Okay. So our curriculum is which we are really developing ourselves now. We've created our own nature-based curriculum that is seasonally based, following the seasons, following what's going on in our world around us. But as you can see from this slide, I'm a big fan of Maslow's hierarchy of need. And I'm sure you will have come across this. If you haven't, please do. We've tried to put everything we believe alongside it. So our curriculum starts with the nurture, allowing our children to be nurtured, to feel safe, allowing them to belong to their family, to the setting, and to our wider world. If they're feeling that they are nurtured and they belong, they will begin to venture out and become engaged in what's going on in the nursery. They will then explore further afield, and then they will be enabled to aspire to reach the top of that triangle and to reach the learning level that they need. Okay. So I think we can end on this slide. I believe this is just our overall sort of manifesto of what we believe in, which we put up in all our stuff to remind staff what we're there for and why we get up and do this every day. Thank you.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for such an engaging insight into the critical work that you're doing. And it followed on so well, didn't it, from the thoughts of Robin and the importance of those 1001 days, the importance of working in partnership with parents, the importance of a child-centered manifesto, and making sure that babies and children stay at the center of everything we do. There have been some absolutely fantastic thoughts and expressions through the chat where other practitioners on the conference, students who've been on placement or who are on placement indeed, have shared some of the thoughts and the wonderful experiences that they have also been able to appreciate now by thinking about the importance of nature and how that really helps. And I think what was significant for me through the presentation was that significance and importance of that whole body experience. That was something that was sort of at the core of and central to what you were saying in lots of cases. And I think that's so important. And the outdoors can do that, can't it? And really engage and encourage all children in a very inclusive way to engage with their environment and be masters of it. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time and for coming along to join us at the conference today. Do feel free to stay. I know that you've got, as I said with Robin, everyone is fantastically busy, but you're very welcome to stay. Otherwise we will be sharing a recording. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on now and welcome Emma. So Dr. Emma Harvey, and Emma has 15 years in the early years sector, holding many roles along that journey. Emma currently leads the higher level early years and education qualification for Suffolk New College and assesses the practice of degree students undertaking graduate practitioner competencies at the University of Suffolk. Emma's PhD research examined the use of technology in the early years settings by practitioners to fulfil their roles, and also how practitioners support children to use technology, something that's on the radar and on the minds of us all. Emma's research findings led her to create a new role, the Digital Activity Lead Coordinator, or DALCO, and Emma's going to take us through that and the training framework. So, Emma, you're very welcome, and I'm going to pass over to you now to share your incredible insight and thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me to speak to your delegates today. As Janet said, I have just completed my PhD journey, so I wanted to share a little bit about that as much as the DALCO, because I know that you've got some T-level students on, you might have some students who are doing degrees, so I just wanted to share a little bit about the journey as well to getting to the DALCO. So the next, as Janet said, the journey I've had has been since 1996. I did my level 3, completed that in 1996. And for the next sort of decade, I spent lots of time in different settings. So in primary schools, in reception classes, in early years settings, as a childminder. I worked in creches and lots of different settings. And then I started working in FE and HE. And part of that role was going out to visit lots of students in different settings. And as I was doing my observations of the students, I noticed that there was such a huge variation in provision for technology. Within schools and early years settings, there was such a huge difference in how children were experiencing technology, and particularly the growth over the 10 years that I was doing that. And then in 2018, the Department for Education decided to look at the EYFS and make some revisions to it. And when I looked at the sort of provisional adjustments to the EYFS, I noticed that technology and ICT had been removed completely from the framework and the guidance. And that's something that was new, because since the EYFS was created in 2008, there'd always been some mention or some guidance on using technology with the children. So I started to wonder how practitioners felt about the removal of technology from the EYFS. Did they think it was a good idea? Did they think it was a bad idea? Did they think it might change the way that they use technology with children because it's not in the EYFS anymore? So I decided to do some research on that, and that was how I got into my PhD journey. So I decided to ask practitioners what they thought about the changes to the EYFS. So I started to plan my research, and it was a qualitative piece of research because I was looking at the views and the experiences and the expectations of practitioners, how it was going to change their practice. So the focus was on the practitioner, the voice of the practitioner, and quite often practitioners' voices aren't heard in sort of things like this. You might be able to give your views on a consultation, but not very often practitioners have a chance to share their voice with people. So, as I say, I plan to have some qualitative time with practitioners to ask about what they thought about the changes to the EYFS in terms of technology use. And I planned to do these lovely focus groups, so going to nursery, sitting with the team, having a chat about their experiences and views. And in 2020, I managed to get one focus group done, and then we went into national lockdown. So I had no more face-to-face contact with the participants of my study. So I then had to change the way I was getting my information, my data. So I started to do some telephone interviews with practitioners, and I managed to get about 12 of those telephone interviews done. And then, because of what was going on with the sector and with people just struggling to keep on working through lockdown, I had to then change to an online survey because people were just sort of didn't have time to sit with me for an hour and have a phone call about the experiences they were having. But eventually I managed to get over 100 people to participate in my study. So I got some really, really good data on practitioners' views on COVID in general, and how it was affecting their work, how they were having to adapt their practice and make changes. And technology really did play a huge part during that lockdown process for people trying to keep contact with families, keep contact with other professionals. They were having lots of Zoom calls and video meetings. They were doing new parent show rounds online. So they were sort of walking around with a camera and showing new parents their setting. So during that time, when I was collecting my data, there was a increased use of technology by practitioners, and obviously there was lots of problems with that, but they were also saying it was really important to keep the business going of the childcare setting that they worked for. So as I say, I had 103 participants in total, but the data that they were giving me was still qualitative. It was still their views and their experiences and what they liked, what they didn't like about using technology. I didn't, in my sort of call for participants, I didn't specify any age or gender or experience. I wanted everybody to be able to take part and give their views. But I unfortunately didn't get any male participants. All of them were female, but I got a lovely mix of age ranges, I got a lovely mix of participants who had a wide variation in qualifications and lots of variation in how much time they'd spent in early year settings. So some of them were quite new practitioners, some of them had been working in settings for 40 years. So I got a really nice broad range of participants over the data collection. So the next slide, please. Okay, so just the findings that were significant to me were, one of them was the qualifications that the practitioners had. So I had one who was unqualified, working in a setting but hadn't had any training. And then you can see from the chart, I had no level 2 qualified practitioners. And then I had quite a high number of practitioners who had a level 3 qualification. And then you can see there is those with qualifications above a degree, so they were doing postgraduate qualifications, masters, PhDs, that sort of thing. But you can see that there is a range of qualifications throughout the participants of the study, which was significant to me later on, because when I was looking at their experiences of training, most of my participants had had some formal training in early years. So they'd done their level 3, 4, 5, they'd done a degree. And throughout those training courses, we then asked if they had had any experience or teaching on using technology. So for me, that was quite an important thing, that most of them had had some early years training. When I asked them about whether they thought that the removal of technology from the EYFS was a good thing or a bad thing, we had quite a sort of even split between those who thought it was a good thing and those who thought it was a negative development for the EYFS. So some of them talked about children. They thought that children used technology too much at home, so they didn't need to use it in the setting, so they were happy that it had been taken out. Some of them talked about how the buying devices, tablets, cameras, that sort of thing, and maintaining them was very expensive. So they thought that taking it out of the EYFS was a good thing to do, because then they didn't have to buy these devices, they didn't have to keep them working. And quite a lot of the participants told me stories about how children had put a tablet in the water tray, so that was completely, you know, it wasn't usable anymore. How they had bought lovely cameras and devices, and the children had sort of stood on them, or they didn't understand how to use them safely and properly, so they got broken. So they were happy that they didn't have to have as much technology in the setting. Some participants said that they didn't believe children needed to use technology, so that they were happy that it was taken out of the EYFS, and quite a few participants said that they were really just ticking a box for Ofsted. So now that it had been taken out of the EYFS, they didn't need to do that, so they were quite happy it had been taken out. Other participants said that they believed there were other skills that were more important to develop within the setting, such as speech and language and communication. The personal and social and emotional development was more important than showing children how to use technology. Other participants said that building children's physical skills, particularly after COVID, when children were coming in who had maybe been at home for a long time, they were seeing those gaps in skills in the speech and language and the physical skills. So they wanted to focus on developing those more than helping children to use technology. And then some participants said that they themselves didn't like using technology, and they weren't confident with using technology themselves, so they shied away from using that with children. So there were quite a lot of reasons why people were happy that the Department for Education had taken technology out of the EYFS. But then on the other side, we had quite a lot of participants who were shocked that it had been taken out completely. They were asking questions about how will children learn how to use technology safely if we're not helping them with these skills. And a lot of them said that the school readiness aspect, because when they go into year 1 in the national curriculum, computing is a part of their curriculum. So children should have experiences along the way to prepare them for that. So again, there was lots of different reasons why people thought that removing technology from the EYFS was a negative thing. So a nice balance there of reasons why it was good and bad to have that removal. The responses that indicated people were happy that it was removed tended to be for external factors. So, as I said, lack of funds. They found it difficult to buy the devices, to keep them working, keep them charged and that sort of thing. Practitioners, as I said, felt that they weren't confident themselves in using technology, so they tended not to use it with children unless they really had to. Assumptions about how children were using technology in their home setting and other spaces available to them, making assumptions that they were using it too much, so they didn't need to use it in the setting. And then also a lack of understanding on the different use of technology for consumption rather than creation. So children at home who are watching lots of videos or programs are consuming that media. They're not using technology to create something. So just things like that, unpacking how children use technology for different purposes. People were tending to sort of blanket the technology use as, well, they use it too much at home, so we're not going to use it in the setting, without stepping back and thinking about the different ways that technology can be used. So there was lots of thought around how am I going to make this data that I've got, how am I going to make it useful for the sector? How am I going to have a contribution to the sector? So then I had to take, as I say, my data and make it into something helpful for early years settings. So the next slide, I think. Yep, so this is what I was talking about in terms of consuming media and using media and devices to create something. So what I want to try and do is to balance out, to reduce the media use and the technology use as consuming, and to increase the creative part of technology use. So developing what I'd found and trying to build something that was something that was helpful to the early years sector, I looked a bit more into the training that the early years practitioners have had. And I found it quite interesting that 64% of the people who responded to the surveys and the interviews said that during their main qualification, their level 3, their level 4, their level 5, 64% of them said that they hadn't had any content in their training that helped them to use technology themselves as a practitioner, or to support children to use technology. So quite a large percentage of the respondents said that they did not have any content or teaching or learning on how to use technology. Now, if you think about some of the participants who did their training 40 years ago, 20 years ago, that's sort of understandable because we weren't using technology in our day-to-day lives. So you can sort of understand that their training might not have had any technology in it. However, when some of the practitioners who qualified last year or the year before that are saying they don't really recall having a lot of content about using technology, that's quite shocking. So that's an important finding for me, that we need to look at what we're doing in these qualifications to help people to prepare themselves for using technology. And similarly to the main qualification, people who are doing CPD following their main qualification, so any post-qualifying training or maybe online courses, again, most or a high proportion of them have said that they didn't have, or they haven't had, any CPD on using technology within their work. Again, for supporting children to use technology, or for their own role within the early years practitioner setting. Most of the people who said yes, their CPD was around online safety. So again, it's about what they're learning. So some have had the online safety training, but they've not really had any training on how to support children to use technology for creation rather than consumption, or how they can use it in a variety of ways to cover the curriculum and the EYFS. So, as I said, when you do a PhD, you need to have a contribution. You need to make a contribution to the sector. So from my main findings from my research, what started as an inquiry into the views and opinions of practitioners on how the changes to the EYFS might affect their practice and how they might be happy about the removal of technology or not happy. From that sort of initial starting point, I had uncovered quite an important area that practitioners within their main qualifications, and after that their CPD that they're doing along the way, there's a gap within that of not being able to, or not being taught that technology is really important, both for the practitioner, but also supporting the children's use of technology. So I've sort of uncovered that gap within training. So I thought that was quite an important thing to raise and to do something about. So that was the contribution to the early years sector. And from that, I created the DALCO role. So it's Digital Activity Lead Coordinator. And initially it's been created for the early years sector for practitioners to use in early year settings, but it can be developed for primary schools, for use in high schools, and also for colleges. So you could have a digital activity lead for a primary school, you could have one that is in the lead for the college. So I've created the early years version, but I'm hoping that as it becomes more developed and more well known, other people will be able to take the framework and actually put that into other settings as well. So the DALCO role is very similar to the SENCO or the PANCO in that it's somebody within a setting who is going to take the lead in championing the use of technology, both for practitioners, so looking at the policies of the setting, doing risk assessments, making sure that all the equipment is kept maintained and that you've got everything that you need, maybe securing funding if you feel that your setting needs something else, maybe securing funding, working with the parents as well, making sure that they're educated on technology use, working with your team as well, cascading knowledge and guiding them as well. So it's taking that role as a champion and a lead within your particular setting. And the DALCO role can be undertaken by anybody, and there is a training package available. But if you're somebody who is quite tech savvy and you feel quite confident in using technology, then you can just take the role and run with it. As I say, there is a framework that can help you to cover all the areas that you need to cover. But we are developing a CPD training course as well that can help people who might feel that they need a little bit more support with that. So I have created a framework, and there's a link there which you can go to have a look at the framework. And it's a framework with 6 arms, and there are different sort of categories of duties that might be involved in being the DALCO coordinator for your setting. So as I say, things like looking at the policies that you have in place, maybe adding to those policies or creating a new policy. It's being up to date with the changes in legislation. So it might be that part of the DALCO role is looking at changes to legislation and making sure that your policies are working within that legislation. Working with your team, so being the champion with your team, sharing your knowledge, sharing information, sharing ideas on activities that can be done with the children. Working with parents as well and guiding them on how children can use technology at home. And then sharing your knowledge with other DALCOs as well across the sector. So we're hoping to set up a community of practice so that you can work with other DALCOs to share information, share your knowledge, share tips and advice, so that you've got that community that you can work with and have people to talk to about this role. And then the next slide, there is a link to the training course as well. So I have, with Janet, we have been working on a 2-unit course. So it's going to be level 3. So the link is there. You can have a look at the specification for that. So it's a NCFE cash qualification at level 3, and there are 2 units to this course. So the first unit is looking at the role of the practitioner and using technology as the practitioner. So things like using it for uploading evidence for learning journeys, that sort of thing. Looking at how technology is used for marketing in the business, look at how technology is used for working with other professionals, maybe uploading evidence to your local authority account. So all the different things that technology is used for as a practitioner, as a manager of a setting. And then unit 2 is looking at how we can support children to use technology. So this is where we're going to look at using technology for consumption versus creation, how we're going to look at how we can embed technology into all areas of the EYFS and how it can span across the whole curriculum, how we can work with children safely and make sure that they are starting to understand how to protect themselves online. So 2 very distinct units, but both of them are equally important within that whole DALCO role. So just on the end there's my contact details. If you would like to have a chat about the DALCO role or the qualification, or if you'd like more information about the training, then please do get in touch. And we're hoping that the training will be available later this year. So thank you very much.
Emma, thank you so much. Absolutely fascinating. And I think it's without doubt, technology has taken a much firmer place, hasn't it? Has a much firmer position within all our lives, and in particular in the world of education, in teaching and learning. And I know there's been some absolutely engaging, debating chat going on around that within the chat. I'm just going to bring Angie in to see if there's anything that she'd like to share from the chat, or any questions that we may have.
Yes, thank you, Janet, and thank you, Emma. That was so insightful and very interesting to see the work that you've been doing. What I found really interesting, and I know it got picked up on a few times within the chat, was the data that you showed with those that were for and those that were against, and that's quite interesting. And again within the chat as well, it was interesting to see the balance between the two, and it's about gaining that balance, isn't it? You're absolutely right, because there's always going to be fors and against, and one of the comments was again about parents, bringing in the parents' thoughts around when we bring those children into our settings. Parents really want their children to stay away from that technology, but it's about gauging their understanding about when it isn't appropriate and how we use that technology. So again, some really interesting points there that I would pick up on. The other one was about the training and making sure that what we're doing is that we're providing the right type of training to support these practitioners and those that in the session today. It's about gaining that opportunity to not be frightened of technology, is to really understand the purposes of why we're using it, and again having that balance is so appropriate. And that really came out in the chat, Emma, and some real positivity and interest in the work that you've been doing, and for myself looking and seeing. And I know that some of the links that you provided won't be able to be accessed, so we'd have to make sure that we've got those appropriate links that we can offer to everybody within the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, Emma, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh no, it's always an absolute pleasure, and great to hear about that work that's being done. And I think we need to be informed of something that we're not so sure of to be able to make that right decision, don't we? And to feel as though we're interacting with that in a confident way and with competence. So I think when parents, and when anyone sees an individual interacting that way with that confidence, then you've got that modelling, and it begins there, doesn't it, for good, safe practice. So fantastic. I know we'll be in touch and talk more, so do stick around if you can. But I also realise that, again, all our guest speakers are so fantastically busy. So if you need to leave the conference, we understand. But thank you for your contribution, Emma. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to move on, and we will all agree, guest speakers and everyone that's on this call, that when we hear from our students, whether they are doing a CCLD, Children's Care Learning and Development qualification in Northern Ireland, whether they're doing an early years workforce competency-based qualification as a young learner or as an adult in England or overseas, whether you're doing a T-level, one of the new English qualifications, whether you're doing diploma, there's so many qualifications that are actually relevant in the world of early years, in the world of supporting teaching and learning and teaching assistants, so many qualifications. When we hear from our students, no pressure, Libby, we are totally inspired, because that is the passion that all of our guest speakers have talked about. That's why we are doing what we do. That's why NCFE work with providers to create the qualifications that we do. And that's why the providers that are delivering the qualifications work so hard to make sure those qualifications come to life, so that when you move on to work in the settings, that you're able to do the sorts of things with the children that Mandy and Sian talked about, and uphold all of those principles that Robin also talked about. So let's move on now to Libby. And Libby, you're a student at Cirencester College, and we're absolutely on tenterhooks to hear from you. I'm going to pass over to you and let you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Libby, just to let you know, I am here to move your slides along. So just say
thank
next
you.
slide, please, and I will move
Thank
it along
you.
for you.
So I'm going to start by talking about my experience with the education in early years T-level. So for my first year at placement, I started at a small local village school working in a reception class. And as soon as I got my placement, I wanted to be there as quick as possible so I could get to know the class, the children, and how the school sort of worked. In my first year of the course, I was only working with 10 children, but within those 10 children, there was a wide range of like very specific needs and abilities, ranging from being above expected and below expected. I was able to use what I was taught in my course at T-level about the 7 areas of learning to plan activities across those 7 areas. And by using what I was taught, I can make all my activities accessible for all the children to participate in. With placement as well, I was also able to take part in like planning trips. So I worked together with the EYFS staff and got to be part of the planning process. So I got to learn about that, which was really useful. So looking at how the risk assessments happen, the bus costs and the ratios. In year 1 as well, I had like multiple observations where I would work with a group of children and I would plan an effective activity around an area and make it accessible to all of them. And then after these observations, I would have my professional discussion with my assessor, where I was able to discuss all my knowledge that I may not have been able to show through the activities, so like my safeguarding knowledge, my knowledge of the children, and all those other areas that factor into planning the activity. By the end of my first year, I had completed my 750 hours, and that was because I thoroughly enjoyed being at placement. I would be there as much as possible. Anytime there was an opportunity to go, I would be there. So I just loved interacting with the children and learning from them, as well as them teaching me. So then placement, when I went into my second year of the course, I stayed at the same placement. However, this time working with a class of only 6 children. And this time there was a much wider range of abilities as well, and very specific individual needs. During my second year of the course at college, I was able to learn about how to conduct different types of observations, which I then could use and apply in placement, and helped use those observations I took to support the children and the other staff. This helped me support the children's development as well as helping me improve my practice. In year 2, I was also given the opportunity to receive my first aid course, which was a great learning opportunity, and it helped supported my practice and gave me confidence that I could perform the necessary first aid effectively if I needed to. Sorry. I was also able to use my knowledge of the curriculum that I was taught in year 2 and apply it to my practice. So being able to know what I knew about what the children would be learning when they enter year 1 and start helping apply that. I had then 3 structured observations that count towards my final grade. So the first one was a literacy and maths combined activity. The second one was an interactive display, and the third one was a care routine. I really enjoyed planning for these activities and using my knowledge that I'd gained of the children and of my placement over the last 2 years, and making them like fun and effective, but also enjoyable to help support the children's learning as well. By the end of my second year, I completed over 1,200 hours of work experience and was lucky enough to be offered a job at my placement to stay until the end of the academic year. I really enjoy placement throughout the 2 years, and it has taught me so many skills that I find I'm not using just in placement, but also in day-to-day life. Moving on to how the course helped me develop my own professional development skills and knowledge. By being taught about the 7 areas of learning and like what they are, it helped me be able to know how to implement these in practice, know like the development milestones of children, and then able to identify whether a children was maybe behind in their learning or overachieving, and then being able to alter that support and give them the correct support they need to help their development. It also taught me I was also taught how to perform CPD, so continuous professional development. I was taught different ways to perform this and how it is so effective to your practice and how it makes you become the best practitioner you can possibly be. So being able to put those skills from the beginning helped me understand areas that I could improve on quickly. My most memorable day in placement would probably be maybe when, I'm trying to think, I think it was doing the nativity and having a couple of children not wanting to go on the stage and having to like go through with assessors behaviour management policies and being able to help support that child to overcome their fear of going on the stage by making it really fun. So that leads on to I was able to be taught like behaviour management skills and how to adapt the activities or practice to meet those wide range of needs, because every child is different and will have those specific needs. And it also taught me how to work with others, so my peers, like the parents of the children or carers, and how to communicate with other professionals. So being able to, if another professional was coming in to help a child, being able to help support them and give them evidence. Again, I've also been given opportunities to go on trips with the college where we would complete risk assessments, plan activities around the trip, look at the travel costs and all the other aspects you might not be taught until like you have to do it. So it's really useful to be able to develop those skills and help me become a better practitioner. I'm now going to move on to why I think meeting individual needs is so important and how this has been seen at my placement. So obviously meeting individual needs is very important for so many reasons. The first one being that making sure that each child gets equal opportunities to develop. So every child should have the same access to learning. No one should be given more or less opportunities than anyone else. Everyone should be able to equal that their learning it might be different ways, but have the same learning. It also helps a child feel seen and heard. So by meeting the child's individual needs, they will not have to struggle to access the learning, and you are there to support them and make that access to learning easier. By knowing the child's individual needs and interests, it also makes planning and practice more effective, as you know what works well for the child and what will hinder their development. So by knowing the child, you can know that they might not like going outside, so you might have to plan an activity that's inside just to help support their development. With meeting the children's needs as well, it helps you develop a strong and trusting relationship between the child and the teacher, but as well as knowing the child, you also then can develop a good relationship with the child's parents or carers, so being able to talk to them about how their day was, things you might have noticed, and then they can communicate those back to you as well. I've seen examples of meeting children's needs with making alternative provision, so making sure that each child is given another way to access learning. So we have like the tweezers at placement, so they're with different like strengths, so making sure if a child's struggling, they might have one that requires less forced use but still are improving their gross and fine motor skills. It also important to meeting individual needs, like going through like my plans in EHCP, so knowing about the child and what their current targets are, their past targets are, what they struggle with is really important to be aware of. And also by knowing a child's needs and their likes and dislikes for their development helps you just know about the child and what works well for them. Myself and other staff at my placement have also been able to complete observations which support the children's individual needs, which I'm so glad I've been able to do. Like completing those observations of the children helped me get like a more insightful insight onto the children, like how they might react in different scenarios. I can then help put those toward the children's personal folders and how they learn best and how to give them the right support. And also by having that development folder, it helps you see how much a child has changed and developed over time. And it's all down to meeting those individual needs of a child to support them with their development. Yeah, that's all my slides.
Libby, thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Angie in a second just to talk through, but the feedback in the chat and the positive affirmations, and actually I could see that you were managing the chat as well as managing your presentation, so hats off to you. Well done indeed. Yeah, people have said how proud you should be of yourself, and absolutely I echo all of that, as we all do here at NCFE. So well done, a true advocate and ambassador for the qualification that you're doing. One thing I will say, I don't know if Emma is still on the call, but what I will say is with all of that professional technological know-how, this is a Dalco in the making. I'm sure everybody would agree. So well done. Okay, I'm just going to hand over to Angie to see if there are any questions. Thanks, Angie.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that because I've written that down as well, Libby, that actually that was great that you were able just to pop that in. I was writing the question down, didn't even have to do it because you were on it straight away. So absolutely brilliant. One thing, and there are so many chats going through there, you could probably see those yourself, but one thing that stood out for me, and maybe that, and this did come up in the chat as well, for me what shone through was your engagement with the team that you were working with.
Yeah.
And I think that says something not only about your placements, but it's about you as an individual and how you were able to engage with those in your placement, and you could see the benefits of that.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the aspects that you spoke about was planning in practice and how important that is to have that child-centered approach, and how you could see the benefits of that. But it was about your engagement with the team to be able to do that and getting involved, and I'm sure others would agree that that really is how a placement should work. It's about your engagement and really them sort of taking you on board as part of the team. So it was great. And one of the comments that came through was to hear your inspirational journey and how you've developed along the way. And I think, and for me, that really shone out. So, and as I can see, lots of people have said very similar things. So well done, Libby.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Libby, for joining us on the conference. And I know that other people, many people will be listening today, but also listening to the recording of this. And I know it will inspire them to keep going when things are tough, because it's always hard, isn't it? There are challenges along the way, but you've made all of the benefits to keep going so clear for us in your session today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to hear from Stacey. And Stacey Mann is a senior advisor for families, early years and childcare. Stacey has over 23 years within the early years sector. Her journey spans 23 years and has taken on many roles. Stacey has applied her dedication and passion in a professional capacity, working and advocating with the early years sector in many different diverse roles and responsibilities. Stacey's core values include empathy, resilience, and an unrelenting commitment to the well-being of others. Stacey will talk to us now about the importance of empowering parents as advocates in their children's lives, but will also give us a flavour of the work that she does in a much wider sense within the National Campaign for Learning. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Janet. Hello everybody. I've really been enjoying this student conference today. I've been lucky enough to be at everyone, and just listening to the student voice in particular always inspires me. But everybody's contributions today have just been wonderful, and it's given me a lot of food for thought. I've been taking copious notes to add to different things that I'm doing. So it's really true that you never really stop learning, do you? Your CPD is just continuous. And so with that in mind, I took on a new role back in August last year as the Senior Advisor for Families, Early Years and Childcare over here at Campaign for Learning. Campaign for Learning lives under the umbrella of NCFE, and so we still work very closely together. And I'm going to share a few bits and pieces with you today that hopefully you'll be able to take away and use with the families that you're working with. So if you're in a teaching capacity and you're working with families, if you are in a teaching capacity working with students, you can pass this information on to them. And if you're a student here, all of the families that you are working with will hopefully benefit from the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Parents have come up quite a few times in today's session from all of the different speakers, and working with parents really is essential as it enhances the children's development and their learning, and the consistent support and a holistic approach really supports the child being at that centre. It also improves communication, trust and understanding between parents and professionals, and that leads to better academic, health and social outcomes as well. Parental involvement also empowers families, and that's what we're going to touch on today. It fosters a community of engagement and also allows for early identification and intervention of any issues that may need to be addressed. Overall, the collaboration with parents, with families, ensures a supportive environment where children really can thrive. You'll be, in your experience, working with lots and lots of different families from different backgrounds. And some of the things that we've heard today, you'll be able to take and use in that practice. Some of it you may need to leave on the shelf because it's not appropriate for the community or the cohort of children and families that you're working with. So it's really to be mindful that when you're in your settings, you're thinking about the community that you're working in, and you're thinking about how you can best support the children and families within that community and differentiate where you can. In my role as Senior Advisor for Families, Early Years and Childcare, I work on lots and lots of different projects within Campaign for Learning. And I'll be sharing some of those with you today. Some of the current ones that we're working on look at maths through stories. So lots of people will be needed when we get into the nitty-gritty of that project. And we will be reaching out to lots of early years educators to get involved with our Maths Through Stories project. We're also doing lots around financial education and maths at the moment as well, so there'll be lots that I can share with you there. So I'd like to introduce you to the National Centre for Family Learning. The National Centre for Family Learning was introduced last year, so we've just gone past our year mark. We went to the House of Lords and launched it at the House of Lords. And the National Centre for Family Learning is a free membership where you can find lots of resources, events and training and news and views about working with families. Currently, we have over 1,000 members, and they tell us that they're working with 242,000 families. So you can see what the members have been up to, and you can see all of the resources that we share or contribute to those resources if you should like to. I'm just going to stop presenting there for a second and just share the National Centre with you, because I think it's important to kind of take you through so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So on the National Centre for Family Learning website, you can go to membership. As I said, it's free, so you can join as a member with a National Centre. You'll see what the member benefits are, and you can also access all of the resources, events and training. If you click onto the resources tab there, you'll see there's a whole host of different resources to support family learning. And there's different ways that you can use all of these resources. So it might be that you download it and you use it with your families directly, or it might be that you download it and use it for your own education, for your own CPD. There are things like vodcasts about learning and about sustainability. There's things like festive family learning resources. What we did here was produced a pack. I'll just click on it for you so you can see and sign in, of course. And this is a pack for those working on a budget. So within this family learning pack, you will have lots of no cost or low cost activities, stories, crafts and games and information to support you, support your families during the winter. So there's lots of links and lots of support in there for festive family fun on a budget. There's lots of resources around ideas about talking to children about money, and they really start from about age 3. Lots of games that you can adapt for early maths as well, and lots of different activities that you can support the parents and the children with. Oh, didn't like me going to the next page. No, it's not going to let me go to the next page, but you'll see once you become a member that there's lots of resources in there that you can download. We also hold events and training. So we have a family learning conference coming up on the 20th of June, which is all around sustainability and climate change. It's a half-day family learning conference and we have 5 free tickets up for grabs, and you can find out how to come along to the family learning conference in your email post today's session, and it will tell you how you can claim your free ticket. We also have networking events where we invite anybody that's working with families to come along and share ideas and share best practice. And we also, as you can see, have lots more events and training planned for the future. Just scroll through that for you. And then the other thing that I would love to share with you today is the Campaign for Learning website, because on the Campaign for Learning website, we work with lots of different policy makers and lots of different families and professionals to bring together a family learning for every child and parent in England, the 5 asks for government. So that is something that you can have a read through and see if you agree with some of our asks. I think you can still sign up to say that you agree with it, and you can see all the people that are also supporting family learning there as well. And it really looks at how important the home learning environment is. It looks at the fact that we're in this kind of triangulation approach of working with families, that it's us as the professional, it's the child at the centre, and then we need to be working with the parents and families as well to really support the children and their outcomes. So I'm just going to reshare. I'm doing my whole technology bit here today. I was great at sharing everybody else's slides, but my own slides, that seems to be a little bit of a stop and a start. So, are there any questions about the National Centre for Family Learning? Because I know that I'm conscious that we need to keep a bit of time to ask any other questions from everybody as well.
Just some wonderful comments in the chat, Stacey, in terms of, you know, just wanting to see what you do. And I've put some links in there for everybody to access as well. And just interested in knowing about those places as well within the event that you're holding. And I think it's really interesting and really relates to everything that we've spoken about today. So I think that would be a really good one. So yeah, I think just really interesting to have a look at those slides. So because I've been involved with the family learning as well with Stacey, and there is so much on there. And what I found is that it's just for everybody. It's not just for families. This has been really useful for any of you to dip into to gain some research or some evidence or some just really interesting information and resources that are available that I think you'll be able to take forward into your own setting. So really useful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're quite right. And first of all, I didn't realise how much was already here and how much has already been added to it over the last few months as well. I think just all of the projects that are coming up, just keep in touch with us and have a look on the National Centre for Family Learning website, where we will be announcing all of the collaborations that we've currently got. The Maths Through Stories is happening quite quickly. So Maths Through Stories is a charity, and we're working with a university as well to bring together some sessions for families, for parents to come in and learn how to use dialogical reading with their children, using maths as the main topic. So they have a book to read, they read that with their child and with the professional, and then they go away and read that at home as well. And they come back and we talk about something from the Education Endowment Foundation, which is around they're called crowd prompts. So it's an acronym for different areas. So you look at open-ended questions, you look at WH questions, you look at how you can do completion and recall. So all really interesting stuff, and I can share that link with everybody as well. We've also got a couple of things coming up around intergenerational care, which I know is a passion of yours, Angie, and we've worked together in the past about with different things that we can kind of bring together for the sector around intergenerational care. So there'll be a toolkit that will be designed for professionals to use in the settings as well. So yeah, lots on the boil really, but if you keep in touch with the National Centre for Family Learning and become a member, you'll be able to see all of those things happening.
Fantastic. Stacey, did you want to go back to the original PowerPoint at all? Is there anything that you'd like to share?
No, I think it's fine.
You're
I think
okay?
let's leave it at that. I think if I start talking about all of that now, I think we'll go way over. So
Well,
yeah, we can use this last bit to answer any questions and listen to any thoughts of the people that are listening.
Thank you. I think what's really come from your session there is how you've tied everything together, because I think it absolutely embraces everything that we've been talking about. So when we were listening to Robin, when we were listening to Mandy and Sian and Emma and Libby, the importance actually of putting children at the centre of everything that we do. Children and young people are why we do what we do, and to make sure that they have the best possible opportunities and choices and experiences as they go through their journeys. And I think that's really been something that you've been able to bring together and embrace. So fantastic. I know that like I was in a privileged position of seeing the other aspects of what Stacey was going to talk about, and you did touch upon this, Stacey. So I will just ask one little question, and that's about the importance of working with parents and trying to empower parents so that they feel valued. Parents, carers in this context. Families feel valued as advocates for their children. And I guess if you had one message that you would give to practitioners who are listening to us today, and professionals who are on the call and listening later, what would that be about the significance of empowering parents and raising confidence so that they feel that they can be advocates for their babies and children?
I think actively listening, I think your communication skills within working with parents and carers is crucial. I think that parents, being a parent myself, I think I communicate slightly differently with parents now than perhaps how I did before I was a parent, or perhaps I've just gathered lots more knowledge along the way about communication skills, and just realizing that sometimes their response is coming from a place of fear, and just really thinking about how they can best advocate for their child. We don't always know their past experiences, particularly in education. And what we found at Campaign for Learning when doing any research behind any of the projects that we've been delivering, it's all been around raising confidence and raising self-esteem with the parents and the families, and how sometimes they come into the room really scared of speaking to us and see us as someone that they can't really talk to. So developing our communication skills is really crucial to developing that parent partnership, and just being really human in that, and understanding and developing that those empathy skills. Actively listening, using your facial expressions, making sure that you really do look like you're interested in what they've got to say, being clear and assertive in that, and just building the rapport. You know, we know that positive relationships is part of the EYFS. It's one of our values in our principles in the EYFS. And I think that piece that sometimes we don't always go back to with the EYFS principles is that if you've got positive relationships, plus you're advocating for that unique child, plus the enabling environment, then that's going to equal the learning and development. That has to come last. Everything else has to come first. So working with the parents, and when we're thinking about positive relationships, it's about building it with the adults. And I think Mandy touched on this in her presentation as well, around you're key person to the child, but you're also key person to that family. And just those communication skills are really, really great. And I think once they go off to school as well, the work that we've done on communication, of how we've supported and how we've listened, will hopefully then continue, because their first experience of working with an educator is going to be a positive one. And then they will go on to negotiation skills. So thinking about clarifying what their advocacy goals are, and whether it's obtaining specific educational accommodations, or it's addressing disciplinary issues, or whatever it might be later on. We've hopefully supported that, and their assertiveness in that as well, so that we really value their opinion as the parent, knowing their child best. And supporting them in a professional capacity, that we've got the expertise about child development and about all of the other areas of child development in the EYFS, but they know their child best. And then also supporting those problem solving skills as well. And I think we can help with that by encouraging parents to think about the educational challenges that they might come up against, thinking about creative solutions, and also resourcefulness, you know, and having the National Centre for Family Learning will be really helpful with that. Because if you haven't had to do that, if you hadn't had to support a parent with advocacy skills, all of those resources there for you to support that, and then just making sure we follow up and evaluate those things as well.
Thank you, Stacey. That really embraces the true ethos of a partnership, doesn't it? It's about non-judgmental equity, and I think that is an underestimated, powerful underlying principle that we must strive towards in early years in education. So thank you so much, Stacey, for your time and for your inspiring presentation, which really did conclude and sum up. I think somebody called it a wrap in the chat, because it really it really did bring together all of the things that our wonderful guest speakers have touched upon today. So we will draw the student conference to a close. It's been an absolutely inspiring time. I just want to thank people before we see if there's any last minute questions and answers, but we have been filtering those as we've gone along, but there will be a little bit of time when NCFE colleagues will be able to stay on the chat for a few minutes if you did have anything that you wanted to share. So please can I express my absolute thanks to Robin, to Mandy, to Sian, to Emma, to Livy, and to Stacey. Thank you for your inspiring presentations. And if there are any students or providers on the conference call, I know Angie popped this into the chat earlier, but if you would like to be involved in future conferences, we're looking towards the 9th of October, where we'll be exploring careers in early years and education. We would love to be able to represent our colleagues better in Northern Ireland and better across the different levels and different focus areas of our qualifications in education and early years. Please do get in touch, and we'll make sure that we have got content that is going to be specifically relevant and appropriate for you if you've got an area of interest. So I hope you all agreed that it's been such an inspiring and inspirational conference. We've heard from so many wonderful informed people, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to host that with you today. I'm just going to ask Angie if there are any more outstanding questions or thoughts in the chat, and perhaps if you'd like to offer a closing statement, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Just want to reiterate everything, just a massive thank you, and there's some real wonderful inspirational thank yous coming through there, and I think every single speaker has touched somebody within this conference today. And I'm just going to go right back to Robin. I know he's dipped off the call now, but I do wonder how many babies have been born since the beginning, and I think it goes back to what he said, and I'm going to leave you with this, I think, because you have the power to change the narrative. And I think it really does go back to that point that Robin made, and encapsulates Mandy at Naturally Learning as well. It's about us being nurturing towards those children, and how much difference that we can make as individuals. And then wrapping it up to Libby as well. You know, Libby, you are the future of our next generation, and it's so inspiring to see the confidence that you're sort of oozing in caring and nurturing our children for the future. So thank you to absolutely everybody. It's been really inspirational. And as I say in the chat, please do look up the links that are there. And I know that Stacey is going to be sharing some information as well with you. So thank you. That's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for attending. This is an absolutely busy time. I used to call it mad season when I was involved in teaching directly. So thank you for taking the time out to come to the conference and for engaging with us in such an engaging and interactive way. It is truly appreciated. And we'll see you next time. Take good care. We are here for the next few minutes if we can help. Bye-bye.